Brian, thank you so much for joining us. Talk to us about how much demand you've received so far from refugees who need shelter.
Yeah, so we announced yesterday that Airbnb, in partnership with Airbnb.org and our host community, have a goal to house up to 100,000 refugees fleeing Ukraine. Now, since we made that announcement, we've had over 30,000 people visit the page to learn about how to be a host or to donate. And we're just trying to get more word out, because basically the name of the game is the more hosts we have, the more refugees we can house.
What's the feedback you're getting from governments, from border crossings, about the situation that these refugees find themselves in the crosshairs of a war?
Yeah, I mean, we've reached out to 14 different governments in Central Eastern Europe, governments like Poland and Hungary and Romania and Germany. And what they're telling us is mostly thank you, because their last reports I heard, there were over 600,000 refugees that have been fleeing Ukraine. And so these governments need to find a way to house them. And what we can provide is an infrastructure. You know, we've housed 54,000 refugees for free since we started Airbnb, and we've housed over 100,000 people in need for all different events for free. So I think we're being viewed, I hope, as a solution to a problem that they have. We can be a great partner, and I think they're appreciative of the support and the help.
What's been the response from hosts in these countries? Has there been an outpouring of support?
Yeah, I mean, it's just starting, obviously, in the last 24 hours, but we have had a large response so far. Just to give you a point of reference, 2 years ago, when the pandemic initially, of course, broke out, we worked with the French government, for example, to provide housing for workers in the front line. Tens of thousands of hosts stepped up. We had tens of thousands of hosts step up to provide housing for Afghan refugees, and we're expecting a pretty big response. Again, the main thing we need to do is just make sure that in the kind of flood of all the noise going on, that people who have homes that have availability in these countries know that they can take in refugees.
Now, I know Airbnb has a significant number of listings in Ukraine, given the number of short-term rentals I see in Kyiv, in Lviv, in Odessa. Do you have employees in Ukraine? And what is the status of your operations and hosts there?
Yeah, we don't have employees. We don't have a meaningful number of employees in Central Eastern Europe. We're primarily in certain hubs. Now, as you imagine, we have thousands of listings in countries in all over Central and Eastern Europe. And so our big focus right now, we're focused on two big priorities. Number one, we're trying to make sure that our hosts and our community is safe. So we're doing a lot of outreach to our hosting guests in countries all over Central Eastern Europe. The second focus we have is try to house as many refugees as possible. And this entire refugee effort, Emily, really started 3 days ago. You know, it was Thursday, Friday, it became apparent that there were going to be hundreds of thousands of people fleeing Ukraine. And so we've worked all weekend through yesterday to be able to mobilize this effort.
Now, several companies have been self-sanctioning, pulling back their business operations in Russia. We just saw Apple pause all product sales in Russia. I know Airbnb also has a number of listings in Russia. Will you consider halting business there? What kind of conversations are you having?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, we have our hands full right now because we made this huge commitment to house up to 100,000 refugees. That being said, I'll say two things. Number one, you know, we are going to cooperate with the U.S. government. We're in constant contact with them in support of whatever sanctions that they intend to impose. Number two, as a practical matter, a lot of the sanctions that have been imposed on the Russian banks in Russia have limited our ability to do business, the ability of people in Russia to receive money, and the ability of people in Russia to pay. So as a practical matter, a lot of our business is probably going to be on pause just from the inability to be able to pay. But we are looking at other steps. As you can imagine, we're just triaging right now.
So on that note, how are you expecting the war to impact travel overall across Europe? I mean, what are you bracing for here?
Hard to know. I don't really know what is going to unfold over the coming weeks and months. But what I will say is that whatever happens in Europe, our business is incredibly resilient. I mean, we have nearly every type of home and nearly every type of community at nearly every price point. And I think what the last 2 years have shown is however the world changes, our business can adapt. And so, you know, we continue to ask ourselves, how can we help in this time of need? The most important way we can help right now is housing people that need a place to stay. But, you know, I'm sure this is going to have a a disruption on European travel, but we'll be able to adapt to whatever that disruption is.
Now, obviously, the last time we saw this, big, generous offer from Airbnb was during the Afghan refugee crisis. What are the learnings from that you're implementing now? What have you taken away from that experience that will help you with this next big effort that you're leading now?
Yeah, I mean, so we made a commitment when the humanitarian crisis broke out and you had thousands of people fleeing Afghanistan. We said we are going to provide housing for 20,000 refugees from Afghanistan. To date, we've actually housed 21,300, and we've increased our goal to 40,000. Much of the learnings we had is just getting the word out to prospective hosts, getting the word out to people all over the world. In this case, it was the United States, but now it's going to be in Central Eastern Europe and throughout potentially Western Europe that you can help, you can open your home. And if people are watching and they don't live in Central Eastern Europe, they can still help by going to Airbnb.org and donating.
So how much are you willing to spend on this initiative in particular? I mean, obviously, you've made some very generous contributions to date. How big does it get?
Hard to know. I mean, Airbnb and Airbnb donors are spending tens of millions of dollars. It's not clear how much it's going to cost because the way it works is hosts have an opportunity to either offer home for free, they can offer home for discount, or they can offer their home not at a discount. Either way, we pay for whatever housing isn't free because this housing must be free to Ukraine refugees. So we don't know how many homes will be offered for free or at a discount, but make no mistake, Airbnb.org are spending a substantial amount to support this crisis.
And I know that you're also very personally involved in some of these generous donations.
Yeah,
what do you see
Nate
what do you see as the role of yourself?
Yeah. Joe, Nate, and I are putting in a substantial amount of money to fund this as well.
And what do you see as the future of Airbnb.org as a larger part of the business, given the impact you've been able to have here?
Well, I mean, I kind of imagine if Airbnb was around during Hurricane Katrina, if Airbnb was around during other world conflicts, even World War II, others, I would have asked, how can we help? And so I think anytime there's a humanitarian crisis where people are displaced, I think the question for Airbnb and Airbnb.org is how can we help provide housing? And I think what this commitment shows is if we can provide housing for 40,000 Afghan refugees, if we can hopefully, with partnership of our host and donors, provide housing for 100,000 Ukraine refugees, what I think it suggests is over time, we continue to build this muscle and we can continue to help support even larger crisis and even more displaced people. And as you can imagine, there's going to be tens of millions of displaced refugees, potentially hundreds of millions of displaced people in this century. We're not going to house all of them, but I hope we're a major contributor to a solution here.
And just to put a fine point on it, obviously, I know the situation is changing by the moment. Are you willing to consider, tougher self-sanctioning in Russia, even though, it sounds like hosts are limited right now based on what they can do? But would Airbnb consider going so far as to cut off the service?
I think all things are on the table right now. So we're really focused right now. I've been working around the clock with the team to try to figure out how can we house 100,000 refugees from Ukraine. But we have another team working with local governments and really trying to answer these questions. And if we have an update, we'll certainly let you know.